I'm Andrew Sherman. I'm a Texas transplant who has always been in pursuit of art as a career. I've played in bands, pursued an acting career in Hollywood, but I found it behind the lens of a camera here in Dallas, Texas. I was born in New York, I've lived in Chicago, Los Angeles, Austin, but I love Dallas. There's a magical artistic scene in Dallas that mostly goes unnoticed to the outside world. This podcast is focused on what makes it so special and the people who make it thrive artistically. If you don't live here, and even if you do, you might not have heard of them. This is the Dallas Famous Podcast.
So who you gonna be? Who you gonna be when you're all grown up? Who you gonna be? Who you gonna be when you're over us? Yeah.
Jason Janik's photos may be the most seen photos in DFW, and it's been that way for a while. This week, we sit down and get to know more about one of DFW's most prolific and published photographer. You may not even realize how many of Jason Janik's photos you're looking at. He shot for the Dallas Morning News for years. He also shoots more clients than I can list here, but the highlights are Spin, Rolling Stone, New York Times, and many local publications as well. We talk about Jason's love for shooting live music, his side hustles, quote unquote, and his new podcast, NTXMF, which also airs right here on Deep Ellum Radio. It's a good one, so enjoy my chat with Jason Janik. We're here with Jason Janik, photographer extraordinaire. He's everywhere. My perception of you is that you might be the most viewed photographer in town because you're doing stuff every day at Morning News, sometimes at D Magazine. I mean, it just seems like there's always a photo of yours coming out somewhere.
Yeah, we could discuss that for sure, because I mean, it boils down to content is king.
Yeah.
And the more content you have, the more eyes are seeing it. That's for sure. But I'm glad to be here in this creaky chair. I don't know. Don't know if you can pick that up.
No, I just hope it doesn't break, because those are definitely hand-me-downs. But
I like the new place. I saw you were in Oak Cliff.
No, it was Junius Heights.
Junius Heights.
Yeah.
I almost said Junius Heights, but then I was like, no, maybe it was Oak Cliff.
Yeah, I loved that location, but it was a duplex, and it really wasn't built as a duplex, so it felt like I was living in an apartment. So this is the first house that I live in.
I dated in high school. I dated a girl in Richardson. I grew up out in Rockwall.
Okay.
And but I mean, high school I was coming here, as much as I could every week, and so I got to know Richardson pretty well, and it's a pretty cool little spot.
Yeah.
So
no,
and then you got people who are bringing stuff in, trying to make it I'd say third leg, but I mean you got to include Denton too. So the kind of fourth leg in the tripod of coolness.
Right.
You've got the Deep Ellum in Lower Greenville area. You've got the Bishop Arts. You've got what goes on in Denton, and then you got people like Reed who are bringing in their cool little non-alcoholic bars and other things going on here. So
yeah.
I think
Six Springs is here.
Yeah.
It's cool. So Rockwall. So Texan, obviously.
Well, I was born in Wisconsin, but I remember having my 4th birthday party like 2 weeks after we moved here.
Okay.
So close to Texan. I can't put one of those bumper stickers on my car that says, born
Texas.
and raised.
Yeah.
But
yeah, me either. But it's cool. I mean, you basically grew up here, though. And so, I'm assuming you got into music way before photography.
Yeah, I was thinking about that. When I was a kid, there wasn't digital cameras, there wasn't internet. And I had a disc camera that my dad gave me, and then eventually he got me a Canon SLR. And my aunt was always super cool. Whenever we'd see her or she'd come to visit, she had a Polaroid, and she'd give me like half a dozen packs of film, and I blow right through it. Mm. I always enjoyed photography, but I never at that time knew that it was like a career that could be had. Mm. When I was a kid up through high school, I was known as the kid who drew comics and made jokes and stuff, and I didn't, at the same time, I didn't know that like stand-up comedy, I didn't know the route to take for that. But I was kind of the stand-up comic of my grade. And I knew that drawing I knew how that would work. You know, you draw and then you sell it. So I always assumed I was to become like a comic book artist or something like that. And that's when I started going to. I started out at Richland College here locally. It's called something else now, but you know, just
This is Richland's still
is
there,
it?
I think, yeah.
It's still there. I just, you know, they changed it so many times. I can't remember if it's the Richland Oh, yeah, I think it's like Dallas College Richland campus or
That's
whatever.
probably what it is, yeah.
But anyway, so I go out there and I take some art classes. And one of the art classes that I wanted to take was already full, so I wound up taking a photography class. And during the photography class, I kind of excelled. One day, somebody from the school paper came in and was like, "Hey, we're looking for people." So I went, started at the school paper, worked my way up to editor-in-chief. And that's about the time that I realized that, you know, you could actually make a living in photography. And I stopped drawing and stopped worrying so much about trying to come up with funny punchlines and stuff, and started becoming more of just a tell my story visually type of person.
Yeah.
So-
I did some improv comedy, and so it's like such a different thing to take photos, and like it feels like a lot less pressure to me the way my brain works. It sounds like it's similar, where you're just like, your focus is, you don't have to be thinking about these other things, like you're thinking about this moment you're trying to capture, you know, or maybe not even that specific about the thought. I don't know how it works for you, right?
Yeah, I found, especially with humor, I found it's a muscle just like everything else, and you gotta exercise it and work it. And it's been so long since I've, you know, had to write out a comic, so I don't have that ability anymore.
Yeah.
You know, it would be pretty weak if I tried it today.
Oh, I wouldn't get up and do improv right now.
But it's the same way with photography. You know, as a freelancer, the ups and downs. You can go from usually about Christmas to February. The work is just so non-existent, and then work kicks back in, and it's like skipping the gym for a month, and you're like, oh, this is tougher than I remember.
Yeah.
And then you get back into it, and you're good to go again.
Yeah.
So-
So I mean, I guess your first published photos would be in the school paper, but after that, like how was your first photo work? How did that look?
Well, so I was at the school paper, and Mark Hancock from the Richardson City paper, he came in one day and asked, you know, hey, we've got some extra work that I can't handle everything. Plus, we need somebody who knows, you know, Photoshop and can kind of prep pictures for publication. Who do you recommend? And they recommended me. So I was working at the school paper. I also started writing reviews and taking photos for Harder Beat magazine, which was a monthly publication that they focused mostly on all the heavy stuff, and it was here in North Texas based, and they wanted some to kind of round it out. So they knew that I liked, you know, more of the pop and the alt country and all the stuff they didn't write about. So I started doing stuff for them, and then I added the Richardson paper, doing stuff for them, and at the end of '99, the Richardson paper and all the other satellite city papers that were owned by Belo, their Dallas Morning News, they said, you know, hey, let's shut down all these papers and turn all this into like sections of our big paper. So the metro section in Richardson would be kind of Richardson focused, but it wouldn't be its own paper.
Right.
And so everyone who was on staff automatically got into the Dallas Morning News, but I was just some, you know, college kid who was helping part time, and I was like, well, what's going to happen to me? And Mark was like, well, I'll put in a good word for you. Why don't you come in, and we'll see if they can get you on as a freelancer. So I go in and meet with an editor. He looks at my stuff and he's like, well, you know, this is good. I can see that you got room to grow, but I like what I see. My book even then was very performance and music driven. I've never been like a breaking news hardcore, win a Pulitzer by dodging bullets type of guy.
Well, you say that, but
I mean, we can talk about that too, because it was interesting getting the pictures of that fair shooting aftermath, because I was there to get goofy, sarcastic, fun pictures for D Magazine. And when I saw what happened, something, just automatically turns on in me. I realized, shooting pictures, that's not what we want to run in D, because the D State Fair photos of the day is goofy, it's fun, it's sarcastic, it's sweet.
Sure.
So I take off my D badge, I put on my morning news badge, and I kick into breaking news Jason. And I got some great shots, and we're obviously getting off track, but
no, I mean,
it's whatever.
Yeah, no, I mean, I was curious. I wonder about that myself, because I have not been in a situation where something pops up.
I have friends who have, and I've always been so lucky at missing danger, because I shot for the Perot Museum for 8 years, and one of the nights. I was at the Perot, and Coco came along, and the kids were off somewhere else, so we didn't have to worry about anything. And we're leaving, and we see a protest go by, and I love shooting protests because I feel like it's something important to capture. And so we're right there at the light, and we're like, well, we can go check out this protest and join in, or we can turn left and go home. And we looked at each other, and we were about to say, let's go to the protest. And the light turns green, and we're like, oh, we just did, a couple hours at the Pro. It was fun, but let's go home. 15 minutes later, the shooting starts, and that's when all those police officers were killed. Yeah. And, there's great people like Pete Friedman who were down there in it and got some great content. But that split second of the light turning when it did, I was able to not be in the middle of gunfire.
Sure.
And then the stuff that happened again with Pete Friedman when he was on the bridge, I almost went to that. And then I would have probably gotten clubbed on the head by a police officer or whatever.
Or your gear would have got smashed up or whatever.
This thing with the fair, on my way to the fair, I stopped off to pick up something off a Facebook Marketplace. And normally you just go in, you pay the dude, and then you leave. But we started talking about something, and I'm looking at my watch. I'm like, I really should go to the fair. I really should go. But we keep talking. It's an enjoyable conversation. And like 20 minutes later, I'm like, okay, fine. I really need to wrap it up. Here's your money. See ya. Right as I'm pulling into the fair, like literally, like I'm going feet from pulling into the media gate, all these cop cars light up and pull up. And one of them's a DART officer. So I think, somebody got stabbed on DART or something.
Right.
I should probably say right now, DART is a client of mine, and they are safe and wonderful. And I do love DART. But we know anywhere something can happen.
Yeah,
right?
when you see a DART person running, it's not weird to think that's... Yeah, I get it.
But so anyway, since it's a DART officer, and it's right there at the DART stop, I'm like, something happened at this station. So I pull in, they wave me in, and I see all these people. They're all like really hurrying as they're leaving, but it's a calm. And so I think to myself, well, maybe something just let out. Maybe the concert got out early and everyone's tired, and this is a mass exodus of people who all went to see one thing.
Huh.
And then when I get into about the Chevy main stage, I hear people talk about shooting. So I'm like, hey, what's up? And as soon as they tell me, we just heard shots over here, and they just made an announcement that we're closing, I kicked into, Spot News, and I went over and I saw the dude, sitting there getting bandaged up, and they put him on a stretcher, and all the cops are like waving everyone away. And I called my editors over at the news, and I'm like, hey, this just happened. I don't think y'all even know about it.
Right.
I mean, because the content was literally just hitting, like TikTok or whatever, whatever you kids use these days.
Right.
And so they were like, yeah, perfect. Send over the photos you got. We'll send over a reporter, and we'll send over a staff photographer to try and cover more. And the staff photographer and the writer, they couldn't get in. I literally, I think I got in like 30 seconds before they locked down gates.
Oh, yeah.
So, you know, a long drawn out story, I guess, could have been simplified by saying I was lucky enough to avoid, you know, being shot and arrived just in time to get the stuff that, you know, the public needed to see in the paper.
Yeah.
I gave exclusive pictures to D too, because they wound up running a little feature as well.
Not
on
the
it.
photo of the day, but just an actual news story. Yeah.
You know, but I think about it, if I wouldn't have talked to that guy for the extra 15, 20 minutes, my route around the fair most likely would have put me exactly where the shooting started at roughly exactly that time.
Wow.
And so, I mean, who knows, maybe I would have been one of those bystanders that got hit. I don't know.
Yeah.
I have no clue. All I know is that I've been lucky enough to have little things happen each time that I haven't had people shoot at me. So
Yeah, that's fortunate. I know we did get off track, but it
we did.
Actually,
what were we talking about?
Well, we were talking about your history. We were talking about when you.
Oh yeah, I just joined the morning news. That's
Yeah.
right. So I go in, because I had said, you know, my book was kind of performance heavy already, but they were like, okay, we'll give you an assignment. We'll try you out. If we like you, we'll give you a few more. On average, freelancers here at the Dallas Morning News, they last a year or two.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, enjoy it, use it to build up your portfolio. And so I do that first assignment December of '99, and that is a pretty long 2 years because I'm coming up on 24 years. So I guess I did a little better than the average freelancer because
you're still freelance.
I'm still there. Yeah. So I prefer freelance. I always get asked, you know, well, wouldn't you like to be staff? I was on staff at the Morning News for a few months when Katrina happened, and that wasn't necessarily about my ability. It was more about finances. They had so many staffers down in Houston, so our assignments like quadrupled. To pay freelance per assignment is really expensive. So I make more than a staffer does per assignment.
Right.
But the balance is there's not as many assignments, you know. So if they're giving you just a ton of assignments, it makes more sense for them to bring you on as staff.
Sure.
So
I mean, I mean, this is a good chance to ask this because I'm not sure how it works. So you're a freelancer, you have a media badge,
Yeah.
and then you just decide I'm going to go to the fair and see what I get.
Well, I mean, with everything's a little different, you know, and I'm sure you've seen you can get in some places easier with just your regular media badge. Some places you have to have it pre-set up. With the fair, every year, the Dallas Morning News always had an allotment of media passes to get in.
Oh, okay.
And then when I was shooting, because I'd shoot like some of the concerts and stuff at the fair for them over the years. And then when Quick came along, we applied for our own media pass. And so then I could go every day without having to go in and borrow a pass. And then with D, they get me my own pass. So I go in whenever I want. They call it the photo of the day. Technically, I'm there like once every few days, and I get enough stuff so they can run a photo.
Gotcha.
It's not a photo from today, it's a photo of the day.
Makes sense.
So, you know, I'll go every few days and get shots, and just the goofiness that you can see at the fair. This
Right.
year, I was a lot more tender and sweet with my photos, but in years past, just the sarcasm was dripping off of photos, because the fair it's beautiful that way.
Mm-hmm.
You can go there and you can have a legitimate, honest, sincere enjoyment, almost like an Aldi version of Disney World, you know?
Yeah, or a Walmart version of it.
Yeah, sometimes, you're right. But then there's so much just great, goofy, silly, absurd stuff
Yeah.
that makes the fair even more beautiful. They had like a superhero day, and so they've got all these people dressed up as superheroes, and one of the dudes is like a falcon. I don't know who he was specifically, but he's one of the two or three kind of falcon characters that there are. but he's so like obese, and he's got a hole right in the middle of his uniform on his stomach, and it just the photo and him just standing there looking so unsuperhero-ish, but he's supposed to be here entertaining these kids. It's a gorgeous photo.
Yeah.
Tim Rogers with D Magazine, he was like, "Oh, I love that photo," and I agree. I'll eventually do a retrospective of Fair stuff and do like a gallery show, and that one will be in the show because it's a gorgeous photo.
Yeah. Cool.
So.
Wow. Yeah, you're right. We could probably talk for 4 hours because we haven't even. These stories are fascinating. So I guess yes.
Yeah. Let me tell you, I could probably do 20 minutes just on feces stories. I've seen everything.
That's not my thing, but
No,
okay, good to know.
I agree. Just let.
Yeah. No. I'm trying to, I guess, go through it. But we skipped ahead because you're saying you started when you got to Dallas Morning News. You already had a lot of show photos, the concert photos.
Yeah. So I've had such an interesting way into photography. Because I assisted commercial photographers. I worked as an assistant at Neiman's and Horchow and Penny's and all the other stuff that people can here in town, except for maybe Fossil. And so I had a really strong commercial lighting and commercial composition kind of sensibility because of that. And but I absolutely adored the local music scene. When I turned 18, and my friend John and I, we'd been friends since kindergarten. We moved in together in this rat hole of an apartment here in Dallas. And, two bored 18-year-olds, we started going down to Lower Greenville, and we started going down to Deep Ellum and getting to see the scene that way and just having it open your eyes and having it kind of explode your brain. By chance, I'd never heard of him before. We were too poor to afford cover for places, so a lot of times we just walk around outside. And one time at 2 a.m., Trees shuts down, kicks everybody out. Then they open the doors and say everyone's allowed in free. It's after 2, so you don't have to worry if you're underage. And Tripping Daisy took the stage, and that's the first time in '93 that I had ever seen, Tripping Daisy perform, and it was so gorgeous and magical. And they'd run these 2 or 3 16mm film projectors, and have bubbles and also, I mean, a lot of stuff that you kind of get from the Spree now, but so much more DIY back then.
Right.
It was. And on that little tree stage, that's what made me fall in love with local music. I loved music forever,
Right.
but that's what made me realize there's actually local music here that's just as amazing as all the stuff I've been adoring on The Edge and Eagle and.
Yeah, it's true. A lot of people. I think I had a big turnaround because I used to play in bands in California.
Yeah, I listened to your thing, and you got a pretty good story.
Huh.
I think I'm going to interview you for my new show sometime.
All right. I mean, that'd be cool. It's easy to shoot bands in a way because they're just kind of like they want that, It's like no one's going to say no until they're bigger, I guess.
Yeah, their tour managers will say no.
Absolutely.
I wanted to see Weezer so bad. I fell in love with Pinkerton. My friend Michael at the college paper. He was big into all the like Pavement and all this other stuff, and so he introduced me to a lot of the more alternative music, and so I fell in love with Pinkerton because of him. And this was before the Green album came out, and so it was that big giant kind of curtains drawn hiatus for Weezer. Nobody had seen them for a while, and they started doing these tiny little clubs because they were getting ready to release the Green album. And so I couldn't get set up for it, and the Harder Beat editor, Linda, she was like, a lot of the shows that we can't get set up through management, a lot of times we can just go up the day of and talk to the tour manager and get set up. So why don't you try that? So I go up there and I start talking to the tour manager, and he he starts railing at me. It's okay if we curse on here, okay? Because I'm going to curse to quote him. I try my best not to curse. And he's like, well, you told all you fucking media there's nobody allowed, blah, 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 you know, you shitbags get, and all, and just, like aggressive, like Henry Rollins on stage, like, you know, gonna tear your throat out aggressive. And so I'm sitting here like, okay, well, obviously I'm not gonna get to see that. And, you know, about that same time, I see this little sheepish dude walk, you know, right between us, and it was Rivers going to get his mail for the day, and I just remember thinking, you know, this would have been a great show to shoot. Of course, I shot Weezer, you know, numerous times after that. Sure. But I don't even know how I got on that story. What were we talking about? There's going to be a lot of this in this interview.
I don't know. I'm not sure.
We started talking about somebody that took a left and then a right, and now
just
where
about bands that. Because you were saying that managers won't let you shoot.
That's right. Yeah. So I mean, you know, but then at the same time, there's been tour managers who are great, because I remember Dallas Morning News forever. They had a policy of not signing contracts. And so we were able to get out of a lot of contracts that smaller publications still had to sign. Or at the very least, the management company would let us cross out the few things that allowed us to use the photo. I say us in a very general sense. I'm not the Dallas Morning News.
But you're talking about the photo releases.
Yes. So they'd let them cross out some of the stuff so that if the Morning News wanted to run a preview the next time the person came through, they could pull from their stuff instead of pulling a generic AP photo. You know, I got a lot of flexibility to shoot bands that other people didn't, and have access to those photos that some people don't, because those contracts can be pretty restrictive. But there was one, it was Gavin DeGraw at Nokia, and we get up there, and somehow there was miscommunication, and they were like, no, you got to sign. Luckily, you know, the people, I shot so many shows that I knew everybody, and I think Justin Press was up there in charge at the time, and so he's like, well, I tell you what, let me take you back, and you can ask the tour manager, because it sounds like, you know, you're supposed to have this straightened out. So he walks me back there. I talk to the tour manager for a second. He's like, well, you know what? I get it. We'll go ahead and let you shoot this show without the contract. So some tour managers are really cool. Sure. And they understand. You know what I mean? Who wouldn't want their artists to be, you know, in the next issue of the Dallas Morning News? It's a huge paper. Yeah. Right? Yeah. But some of them don't care.
Yeah. I mean, that's the best thing about the Observer for me, is there's sometimes where, like, Sting, I got approved within like minutes, because I think they're like, whoever's shooting for the Observer is approved, you know? And like, so there's certain things that you just don't get a yes unless you're with.
Well, and the cool thing about that too is these days, I forget who I was listening to, but they were talking about how the media landscape has changed and how there's so many less people covering stuff now. So now I think tour managers and the marketing machine is taking note that the people who still want to cover us, we need to let them cover us. Yeah,
and it's been cool, because I get a lot of like publicists asking me to cover stuff, and now that I have my publication, I can send other people to do it. So it's interesting.
I mean, at the same time, there's something with having a name behind you, you know, because
100%.
I mean, when I was shooting stuff for Harder Beat, there, you know, it was a little harder to get every show that you wanted. But, you know, when I shot Green Day for Spin Magazine, they were like, okay, all the other photographers leave, but we know you were Spin, and Spin asked for these couple extra shows, so we're going to give you an extra 3 or 4 songs.
Nice.
You know, so I mean, there's, when you're shooting for Spin, or, you know, when you got the name Rolling Stone behind you, whatever, it helps.
Yeah, I can only imagine. Yeah, I mean, Observer is the biggest name I have, and sometimes I feel really cool that I'm like, who are you shooting for? I'm like, Observer, like,
but the Observer is cool. So after Quick went away in 2011, I had a lot of interest, and so the guide section of Dallas Morning News, they were like, well, we want to do kind of what Quick was doing, so let's work with you for some covers. The Observer came in, and they were like, hey, you know, we love what you're doing. So I wound up doing like covers for the Observer for a few years.
You ever do Central Track or no?
I did one or two things for Central Track with Pete. I love Pete. He's a great guy.
Oh yeah, he was a fun interview. Actually.
Oh yeah. It was neat too because I got to learn more about Pete. That from my interaction with him, I didn't know.
Yeah.
With Pete, I've always known as a super smart, super sarcastic, really great writer, and a guy who you gave him room in the pit because he was trying his darndest. To take good pictures. I mean, he's a good photographer now.
Yeah.
I got a lot of flack for this years ago. I did, it was like a Q&A session. Pete for Central Track had like 4 or 5 of us photographers up there on stage. And he asked some questions, let the audience ask some questions. And a couple of the questions, one of them was... what's the last show that you saw? And everyone's like, oh, I went and saw this. I said, well, the last show I saw was the one that I shot. I said, I don't pay to get into shows. People either pay me to get into shows or I kind of trade out. And like a few of the like hardcore, like we have to support this scene, people like they gasp. And, I heard them kind of trashing that afterwards. But it's a fact of life. I support local music and the local scene in so many myriad ways. Uh-huh. So maybe I don't go and spend $20 to get into a show.
Yeah.
I mean, the million things that I do to support, the prints that I've given away to Rhett's charity every year, the pictures that I've given some of the bands that maybe can't afford a better photographer at the time.
Sure.
I mean, I support the scene.
Yeah. I mean, I agree. I don't feel bad at all asking to get into shows because it's like what you're doing is you're doing more than someone buying a ticket in a lot of ways. You're
exactly.
I mean, you're making it look exciting and people want to go see it. That FOMO is real. And when people see a show, they're like, I was going to go to that, see your photo, or I'm going to go next time. And they do.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So.
So, I mean... anyways, and I don't remember what that question was about. Somehow I got off again.
We were just talking about Central Track. We're just
thank you. That's exactly. Let's loop back around.
Yeah.
I probably got all the listeners dizzy already.
I'm just impressed that I can remember anything that you're talking about.
So with Pete and Central Track, I traded out a couple of times. There were some things that I wanted to, or actually my wife, she really liked Tricky because she's big into the kind of trip hop and stuff and Massive Attack and all that kind of stuff. And so she was like, well, I want to go to that. And I was like, well, I guess let me call Pete and I'll go ahead and I'll set us up for that. And so I shot and reviewed the show and she got to enjoy it. And it was a great show. So to answer your question, yes, I've done some stuff. I've done a couple of things for Central Track. Yes.
That's funny. Here's a hard one, or maybe it's not, but I would think it would be a hard one. Do you have like a show that stands out that you shot either because it was amazing or because it was awful or both? I don't know.
Oh. All right. So I mean, I've done this for so long. You got to figure the first bands that I shot because. I remember when I was a teenager going with my dad. We were big into cars, and he was in the classic Chevy club and had a '55 Chevy. And I mean, my 3 loves, give or take, are photography, music, and cars. Or I guess maybe 4 because you can add in cookies/donuts. But yeah. So my first concert I remember seeing was like a K-Love event that they had a lot of classic cars at too. So we were there, and I think one of the Monkees was performing. And I was like, oh, that's interesting to see, all this stuff that I listened to on the radio on cassettes, is there actually live in the flesh.
Yeah.
And I may have even taken like my disc camera or whatever and taken like one photo. I don't know. It's lost to history. See, I've already lost what we were talking about.
You were going. There was one of the Monkees played at this show with your dad.
How did we get on this?
Oh, like your most.
Oh yes, most. Yes, thank you. Yeah. So when I first discovered Tripping Daisy, which that show in '93 at 2 a.m. will never leave my mind.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what sparked me wanting to see all this live stuff. And so there was where the Single White is now. It used to be called the Winedale Tavern. My friend John and I would go there every week, and we'd see people like Josh Allen and the Carsons and these these little bands in this tight little packed space perform. And I started to fall in love with that. And then going to Clearview and seeing people like Super Drag come through town.
I love Super Drag.
Oh yeah, I love them
Big
too.
fan of them.
I got some interesting stories about them too, but we'll save that for another day. And then like Chomsky would play there, and God, just I saw so many shows at Clearview. But so I started just seeing all these shows and all of them, seeing Tripping Daisy play Christmas night and just the chill in the air before and after. And Tripping Daisy is always going to be my biggest thing.
Okay.
I've got this dumb little phrase, my soul animal. It's a cross between soul brother and spirit animal. And the stuff that happened on stage with Tripping Daisy, I felt that soul brother connection and seeing the magic and the sparkle just shooting off of everything. I mean, that was my spirit animal.
Wow.
So like Tripping Daisy is my soul animal. But anyways, so, I shot... I got to shoot Willie Nelson numerous times and getting to meet him backstage, and got to shoot the White Stripes. Their album had just hit that they became famous from, but it was just building that momentum. So it was a few months before they just absolutely exploded. So they played Trees, and being there for that show was really magical because Jack really wanted it. You could see he was absolutely in love with what was happening there, the back and forth between him and the audience.
Wow, that would have been cool.
And getting to be the only photographer at the Meyerson to shoot Yo-Yo Ma, getting to shoot Pantera. They played the Fair Park Coliseum in like 2001. And the news, they'd send me to a lot of shows and a lot of performances, a lot of operas, because they knew that's what I loved. And from a news aspect, that's kind of low on the totem pole.
Sure,
a lot of those guys, they went to Iraq, they went to the Olympics, and unless it's a band that they were absolutely in love with, it's not something they're concerned about. You're not going to get a Pulitzer by shooting NSYNC. I shot NSYNC and it was fun, but I don't have a Pulitzer from it.
Right.
So
that's a tragedy, but yeah.
Yeah. So I get Pantera, and I get there, and the place. I mean, that Coliseum it's a decent sized Coliseum. It's got a full like rodeo size court and layers of seats, and that place is full, like so full, like when you open one of those cans and all the springy worms shoot out, the snakes. That's how full this place was. I was afraid for them to open the door because people were just going to come shooting out.
Oh wow!
And so we get in there, and the band's just about to take the stage, and the crowd's just going wild, and you got women on top of people's shoulders, and people throwing things, and this one dude in the middle of the crowd in this hot, packed shoulder to shoulder Coliseum takes off his shirt, lights it on fire, and starts swinging it around in the air. And I mean, just stuff like that. You don't forget.
Yeah.
I've got so many shows that I could be like, this little thing here was magical. That was magical. Because I've seen a lot.
Yeah.
I've seen a lot of stuff.
Yeah. How did you kind of connect? I mean, that's obvious, I guess, maybe after you, well, whatever. That's what I'm going to ask you. Like, how did you connect with old 97s? How did you connect with like, just from shooting them all the time?
Yeah, that's that's the key to having a successful career, is to do what you do well. Doesn't have to be amazing or the best. Do what you do well and meet a lot of people. Because I mean, every gig I've got, except for one, is all because I was referred or somebody I know. And with the old 97s, I was with somebody for 10 years and she loved them and our little group of friends loved them. And so I shot them a number of times, and then in 2004, I went and did a portrait of them, maybe for Harder Beat. I can't remember, because I think I was still with Harder Beat. For a while, I was doing Morning News and Harder Beat. I didn't give it up because Harder Beat, even though it was a small little publication, I could go and ask, can I do this show?
Right.
So it gave me a lot of flexibility. With the Morning News, they tell you.
Right.
You know.
Sure.
And I mean, even with the Morning News, if I knew something was coming up, I'd tell the editors, hey, this is coming up. I'd love to shoot this. So, I mean, there was some flexibility.
Mm-hmm.
But, like, there were a couple bands that I wanted to shoot that senior photographers were like, you know, this is my dream band. And so they got it. And that's fine.
Sure.
But so anyways, what was the question?
Yeah, I don't know anymore. We could keep moving forward. I mean, you answered it. We were oh no, you didn't answer it. I was asking about old 97s.
Yes, yeah, perfect, thank you. So anyway, I shoot a portrait of them, and I had gotten to know Salim and shot some stuff for him that ran in the Morning News, and just started kind of becoming friends with some people. And then in 2009, Salim called and he was like, hey, you know, I told Rhett I think we should use you for his next album. It was on a smaller label, and he's got a lot of really famous photographer friends. I think you might know Danny Clinch, and his list is long. I mean, because you know he's been around the world.
Yeah.
And so, you know, Rhett and I were talking. He was like, yeah, you know, I was tempted to use this person, but I didn't want to ask him to do a favor because the label doesn't have the budget that, you know, the big label for my previous albums did. So I guess I'm kind of the Aldi version of
budget. Yeah.
But so I got chosen for that, and then Rhett and I mean, we're casual friends. You know, it's not like I'm going to his Thanksgiving or whatever.
Yeah.
But, you know, I got to know him better, and then I started working on his charity show for cystic fibrosis, because I've got nephews that have CF, and so I got to know him and his brother through that. I handled PR for the shows for a few years, and then shot them. And you just kind of develop friendships with people. And he's a great guy. Honestly, all the guys in the band are great.
Yeah.
I've gotten to know Ken a lot more over the last few years. I was always told Ken doesn't like talking about old 97s.
Huh.
So Ken's big into sports. I'm not big into sports. I like talking about old 97s. What do we have to talk about? So I never really talked to him much.
Sure.
And then a few years back, we started talking, and he's big into like board games, and we realized we have a lot more common ground. And so now I'm really comfortable talking to Ken, and Philip's a great guy. Murray's not here in Dallas, so I don't really talk to him a ton.
Sure.
But I think there's a mutual respect between me and them, because we both know that we're masters of our craft. Mm-hmm. So
yeah, no, it's cool. I mean, they're one of my favorites too. I've shot them a few times.
Yeah, they're one of the few bands I normally don't have to ask for work. You know, work comes and finds me.
Right.
But they're one of the few ones that I told Ken recently. I was like, you know, I know you're working on a next album. You know, why don't you bring me out and let me shoot? And he said, well, you know, your name was one of the ones that came up, but we're stuck up here doing this I think they were like in Portland or Seattle or somewhere up there. And we've got a guy up here that we know, so it made sense. But
yeah, I hear that.
but otherwise, I mean, all the Bowling for Soup albums that I did, you know, that kind of fell in my lap. It was, I guess I'm the most unsuccessful person you'll meet, because I've had a lot of really cool things happen, and I'm not really out there like beating down doors for it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess I just kind of lucked into it.
Yeah, I know. I mean, and then, because I've been doing it long enough that I experience, it's just the more good work you do, the more people are just when like, because people don't need photographers all the time, but when they do,
Yeah.
they do remember.
And they ask their friend, "Hey, I know that you have worked with photographers. You know,
Sure.
who do you recommend?" And then because you've had that rapport built up and they respect what you do, you get, you know, recommended. I've got a Facebook friend that recommended me to do corporate headshots for a company. I go in, go out. It took me, you know, half an hour to set up and break down, half an hour to shoot. So I'm there for an hour. I bill them $1,500. You know, and that's because a friend referred me. They didn't find me in the phone book.
Oh yeah.
You know,
no.
it's all about referrals.
No, it's what you said earlier too. It's like, I mean, for me, like when I really got into it, I was shooting at Deep Ellum Company every single night, and I met so many people, and that's kind of like that's where it all came from, is meeting the people. I mean, shooting,
Exactly.
you need to get good, but it's the relationships.
Yeah, they're not going to refer you if you suck.
Yeah, and you know, you're not going to meet anybody if you're home. You know, you have to be out doing it.
That's the biggest thing. That's why you've seen a little more activity from me over the last couple of years, because I was huge in the scene. I mean, my name started to get noticed. So I started. I guess we can backtrack. I started shooting the scene in the mid 90s. I told you about through college and this and that. But I also, this was back before smartphones and when the internet was really trying to figure out what the internet was. And there was no content on the internet. And there was me and like a couple other people here in Dallas who were covering stuff and putting it on the internet. I had just some GeoCities page, but you know, it was filled with stuff from all these local bands. And
yeah, you have so much out on the internet right now. I mean, like I think I found one of your old, maybe it's a newer website that has been or older website, but it had like archives from 2009 and like just countless archives of photos.
Yeah, I don't keep up with my website. My current one that I started to build is like half done. It's been sitting like that for over a year because I don't have to sell myself.
Yeah, exactly.
So I mean, whatever is out there, the hodgepodge is out there. I mean, yeah, you can find all sorts of crazy stuff.
Yeah.
I try my best not to Google myself too often. But yeah, there's a lot of lot of photos out there.
And we were talking before too. It took me a minute because I kept spelling your name with a C and not just with a K. And you were saying,
that's the tricky part is spelling it Janik, because there's a faction that spells it the same, but they pronounce it Janik. There's some out there that it's spelled with two N's. There's some that are spelled ICK. But the same thing, the uniqueness of the name, and me getting on the internet early, you know, I was able to, you know, grab like jasonjanik.com and Janik Photo and stuff, because you know there's one dude like in North Carolina or something named Jason Janik that is a musician, and there's been a few more Janiks pop up over the years as you know things just grew.
Sure.
But yeah, I think I was at the right place at the right time because the late 90s was still all film. Digital really didn't hit big until, you know, the early 2000s. I got my first digital camera in 2004, and I was kind of on the early-ish side of that. But yeah, so I had access to film scanners. I had access to film and all that through college, and I had access to the internet. And so I was putting up stuff that a lot of people just wouldn't put up.
Oh yeah, no, I mean I remember back in the early days of the internet where it would take forever to just for normal people to load a photo. Or I remember the first time we did a live stream or something, and it was like so cutting edge, and it didn't really work. You know, it was just so it's yeah. You've been around. But you're like a grandfather for the internet age in a way.
Well, and the beautiful thing about it, again, it's this kind of lucking into things. Is Tripping Daisy was always so cutting edge. They had a gorgeous, beautiful, big website when nobody did, and I had printed off some black and whites right before the end of this winter semester, and I was like, I'm going to mail these to Tripping Daisy, and so I mailed them to them, and a little while later, I get an email from Julie, Tim's wife, and she's like, hey, we actually have a show coming up. You know, would you mind shooting it for us?
Wow, yeah.
And so I shot it for them. They mailed me a check for $150 to shoot it. And I always think if I didn't need the money so bad back then, I would have loved to have just kept that check.
Yeah.
And that was my first, like, truly official, I'm a music photographer. now type of thing and just framed it. But their website was so much more than everybody else back then that I eventually kind of became their website photographer. And so all the shows that came through town, I didn't travel out of North Texas. I went to Fort Worth and Denton and stuff to shoot them. Sure. But I wound up shooting, dozens of shows for their website. And then people, back then, Tripping Daisy was everything for Dallas. Mm-hmm. And so, then people get to know you because of that. And then they start seeing your name in the morning news, or they love Harder Beat. It's funny because as small as Harder Beat was, I'd be walking in some random place, and we had our little pictures in there, and people would come up to me and they'd be like, "Oh, you're Jason. I pick up the thing every month," and it's so weird. And then by the time Quick came around, and my name was on everything, and I had shot Bowling for Soup covers. And it had gotten to a point to where almost any place that was associated with nightlife or entertainment or whatever I'd walk into, and there'd be someone there who knew me that I didn't know. And so I got a taste of what real stars get, and it kind of freaked me out. It's a weird thing. So it's a really weird thing to have people come up to you and talk about how much they adore you, and you have no clue who they are.
Tell me about your DJ stuff. I see that you do DJ gigs.
So let's backtrack again and do a sort of weird zigzag thing. Okay. So years ago when I did that Central Track thing, and we had all the photographers up on stage, and Pete was asking some amazing questions. And one of the questions he asked, he says, well, what do you do for your day job? And everyone starts listing off whatever. And he gets to me, and I just kind of shrug my shoulders. I'm like, what? This is my day job. Mm-hmm. And it surprised me because, I've been around all the morning news photographers who, that's their day job. And I've been around all the commercial photographers from when I used to do that, and that was their job. And so, that's when it really hit me. All these people that I love and adore, like you should interview Joel Winburn at some point, because he was the house photographer at Starplex and this and that for years. Eventually things change, and sure. But he's got some great stories. But anyway, so these people like Joel are sitting next to me, and all my experiences with him are all this job. And you don't stop to think, oh, well, all these people, and like Mike Brooks and everyone that was up on stage with me, oh, they do other things besides photography. But photography has been my main thing since like '98. But I've got some, I guess you could call them side hustles. Mm-hmm. I'd hate to call them that, because a side hustle, doesn't that kind of infer that you actually make money off of it?
It does.
People know me because I've got a little antique mall booth devoted to music and records and CDs and cassettes and promo posters and all that over in Plano. By the time the feds get their cut and all that, I might make like $100 a month off of it. Mm-hmm. And it's a lot of work to go out and find all that stuff.
Sure.
And then a lot of people know me because I've got a hobby of rebuilding vintage audio.
Oh.
And so, I've a lot of the people in the scene, I've sold them their vintage gear or fixed it. But again, I can't say that I really made a ton of money off it. You can ask Chad Stockslinger, for example. I sold him a receiver, and then I sold him some speakers, but I let him take like a year to pay me for the speakers. And then I gave him a turntable. And then when the receiver went bad and needed to get repaired, it was beyond my ability, so I paid a friend $165 to repair it. And that was 2 years ago. And every year I'm like, at some point, Chad, if you want to pay me that $165, that's fine. But right. I'm sure if I added it up, all the gear that I've sold, I've probably lost money more than make money.
Yeah.
And then on the side, DJ. But And that could be a whole nother offshoot story about how all the DJs that I've shot want to be photographers, and it seems like all the photographers want to be DJs. But I figured, I've got all this music. I've got, I built up some pretty good gear from bartering and trading and buying all this vintage gear. So I figured I'd get into it and try it. And I book a few gigs here and there. It's a lot of fun. I used to do something at Twilight every once in a while. And funny thing is, the thing that stuck best in Deep Ellum was when I did a vintage jazz night, because that just wasn't down there.
Right.
And I'd get people come up to me and give me a fist bump and like, oh, I like that song or whatever. But then when I did the vintage jazz night, everyone was like, oh, we got to do this more. But then COVID hit, and so I stopped doing Twilight.
Sure.
Book a few little private gigs here and there. It's like a side thing.
Yeah.
And by the time that I bought new because I do all vinyl with some CDs, I don't do a computer.
Oh, okay.
So that's my thing, because I want it to be fun for me.
Right.
And it's much more challenging that way. But by the time that I bought, more records and all this, it's probably a break-even thing.
Gotcha. And your new podcast is premiering tomorrow on Deep Ellum Radio?
Yeah, tomorrow or probably weeks ago.
Weeks ago by the time we hear this.
Today, this rainy day, it's premiering today at 7.
Oh, today,
So
yes.
for y'all who missed it, I'll eventually, when I get a few enough of them together, I'll probably offer it out there in true streaming podcast form.
Mm-hmm.
But right now, I've started NTXMF, North Texas Music Fanatics, for Deep Ellum Radio.
Yeah, I did want to talk to you. Something I've noticed, because I follow you, I see your stuff a lot on Facebook especially. I like how you kind of always tell your story about that moment that you took the photo. I think that's cool, because it's like I don't really do that as much, and it's just I'm like, oh, that's
Yeah, I curate my stuff for different platforms, and Facebook is friends. I've got some people who are very distant, casual friends, but I'm not going to friend random strangers on there. So the way that I tell my stories on Facebook are a little more behind the scenes. The stuff that I put up on Instagram is a little more polished, but trying my best to say, here's an inside track. And then I used to do a blog when I cared about my website, and that would be very involved. But I mean, so much of my stuff, it gets published here and there that I have to make sure that the full story is just seen in the photo itself, because I don't have the freedom to do like you remember when they were doing the People of New York or Faces of New York, and on Instagram it was a picture and there was like a big long drawn out like 2 or 3 paragraphs.
Sure.
I don't have the liberty to do that, because the client's going to take the photo and run from there.
Absolutely.
So I try to use different venues to express some stuff in ways that I normally wouldn't.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting. I guess it's just something you enjoy sharing the work, because like you were saying, like it's not like you're hurting for work. You're not posting because I need you to see the photo to give me work. It happens and it's nice, I'm sure, but it's like it's not like a need for you.
I'd say, I don't want to get... I don't want to exclude the fact that I understand that that's going to happen. Like I know there's an underlying, the more people see my pictures and my name, the more work I'm going to get from it. But I'm not like some of the photographers who are green and new and just scraping and scratching, and I've got to get that gig so that I can, become something. So, and I think that's why a lot of people appreciate seeing the stuff that I put out, because I don't have to seem so thirsty.
Yeah. It's a difference, and it's like very palpable, and I appreciate it, because I'm older too, and I'm not like, I feel like I've got to a point where I don't have to like hire me, like, hey, who wants to shoot today? There's nothing wrong with being at that stage. We all had to start there.
There was a point where I had no clients. I remember my very first band gig that I did. It was a Christian metal band, and they wanted pictures because they were putting out a new album. And I remember being so excited and so anxious. And I didn't use my business sense because of it, and I gave them the photos before they paid me, and they never paid me. So my very first gig was a non-pay, and so there's something about being so anxious and excited at that point, and I don't want to seem arrogant. I just want to seem matter of fact. You know, once you've been doing it for 30 years, you're going to reach a point where you can do it in a different way.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it's so interesting too, because you were kind of doing it before like Facebook and social media was what it is now, you know? Yeah.
And even back then, even when there was nothing on the internet, and I just had a bunch of pictures up on, the GeoCities thing. I think I called it Dallas Music, blah, blah, crap. I don't know.
Right.
Even then I was putting stuff up for the love and joy of what I had inside for music. I wanted other people to see it. But the internet was so new then that you didn't know who was going to see it.
Right.
And you certainly couldn't see it on your in your hand on your phone when you're sitting there waiting for your latte. You had to sit down in front of a computer and hear the screeching noise for your dial-up. Yeah.
Right. Oh man.
So even then I was just doing it for me.
Yeah.
But then when you discover and you have those people first come up to you and like, oh, I saw that you shot that of me, and that is so amazing, and it's like a back and forth that builds, and you just get stronger and better and faster. And
yeah. And I also feel like we're living in this age, like this internet age is the age of photography in a lot of ways, or video. You can argue either one, but it's just, at first I think the iPhones came out and a lot of photographers were upset because they're like, oh, they're taking my business. But I think because of iPhones and everyone having a phone, people are like, oh, I know the difference between a good and a bad photo, and now I want to see good photos. I feel like that has benefited us a lot,
Yeah. I've thought about this, and I've thought of a way to do a whole episode on the philosophy behind art and the philosophy behind photography, because there's so much content out there at this point that even if your stuff goes viral, it eventually, metaphorically, is lost to space. I was lucky enough, you may not remember the story of the pregnant woman who got the ticket for being in the HOV lane.
I do, yeah.
Yeah, so the story, it wasn't a story at the time. The morning news just happened to find out about it. And so I go in and I take a portrait of her, and the story just blows up and goes all around the world.
Yeah.
I went up selling it, the pictures to, places in Sweden and Germany and the New York Times and just everywhere. And it was just so, and I watch TMZ because I'm that way. My wife hates it, but everybody's got their vice, right?
Sure.
And to see my photo pop up on TMZ,
wow, yeah,
just the way things blow up today, and then they disappear. You can't shoot the way you used to shoot. You can't care about who's looking at it. You can't care about it making some sort of name for yourself. I mean, because even if you're Ansel Adams, you're dead now. Your images, sure, they still reach people and move people, but when you really get deep down philosophical about it, what does it mean? You have to only focus on, I'm taking this picture now, and I'm going to communicate something inside me that I want to get from inside of me to outside of me. And from there on, it's just out in the wind, and you can't worry about it anymore. You can't think I've got to make this picture, be seen by tons of people. You can't. Maybe I'm afforded the chance to feel that way because my stuff has been seen all around the world. I've been published in Rolling Stone. I did, a number of features in Spin magazine back when it used to be a real thing you could hold. I've been in all the major papers. So maybe this is one of those situations where I'm out of touch from the average photographer, and so I'm afforded to think this way. Because if I was just starting out, I'd be like, that dude that I'm listening to is a moron. I want my stuff to be seen.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I don't think that, I'm not hearing you say I don't want my stuff to be seen. I think I'm hearing more about like, you can't think one photo is going to make your career.
Well, and even more than that, you can't feel bad for the stuff that wasn't seen. You have to shoot something for you. You have to express, because as much as I'm sitting here talking and rambling, I'm horrible at expressing myself verbally. I am decently eloquent when I sit down and write. I had a partner that as we were ending things, and she was like, "Why is all this stuff that you're telling me in text so beautiful? And when we're face to face, none of that is there." And I think what it is I have to express myself through my photo, and I have to give whatever communication I want from inside of me out through that photo, or out through through whatever review or whatever it is that I'm writing. And then I've expressed myself, and it's done, and I let it go, and it reaches whatever or whoever or nobody that wants to be on the other side of that communication or that shared emotion. And that's why I said I could get into the philosophy of this and just talk and talk, because you have to get to a point where you're able to just let it go and let the photo be its own entire thing. Because wrapping back to what we were originally talking about, it's ultimately that there's so much content out there. It's a tidal wave that will absolutely smash and destroy you, that you can't worry about trying to be a little boat or a little surfboard trying to get to the top of that wave. You just have to do what you do and let it go.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, so this gives me maybe the last question of this interview is what's left as a photographer for you? What do you want to accomplish that you haven't yet?
Well, I think as a photographer, like I said, it's about communicating, and I'm going to want to communicate and share until I cannot communicate and share. And I have 10 or 20 years worth of wonderful, fair photos. I'll put together a gallery show at some point. I've got a project that I'm trying to keep under wraps until I get it going, but it'll be for 2024 that I shoot it, and it will come out in 2025. Now that my kids are old enough, when in the 2000s, things were set up really well to where I could be a full-time dad, and then I could go out at night when my wife came home and shoot for Quick and the news and all that. And so it was a real good balance. And so I was out a ton. And then when we divorced, and we split the kids right down the middle. So, I had them half the week, she had them half the week. And all of a sudden, half the week, I'm a stay-at-home, single dad. And so I completely kind of changed the way I was. And at that same time, Quick ended, and all this change is happening. And I stopped, instead of being at shows and nightlife, maybe like 4 times a week, maybe 3.5. Quick had me out a lot. Now I'm going to maybe one show every 2 weeks, maybe even one show a month. And so I got to a point, because I love my boys, and I think they'll, as they become full adults and have kids of their own, they'll realize that I'm absolutely proud and in love with the sacrifices that I made from 2011 to now for them. But now that they're old enough and driving and doing their own things, and they've got little jobs and all this other stuff that I barely see them, or my wife Coco has her 2 kids, and they're the same age, so they're barely at home. It's given me so much more freedom that especially last year or so, I said, I'm going to go back to what I was doing, and I'm just going to go out there again and just shoot a lot of content. And so the stuff with like the Deep Ellum 100 project, I shot stuff for their album. I did a thing, it was ER Nurses Week recently. And so I I went up there for a couple days and I just shot all the people in the ER department, and then provided them with a thank you through photos. And I've got, obviously the fair every year. I've got a project that I'm putting together with a local writer on the North Texas sumo scene.
There's a sumo scene here?
Exactly. That's what was so beautiful about it. When I found out, I was like, I'm all of a sudden afforded this free time to do like I used to do and be out everywhere. And I've had friends who have always done stuff on spec, and like Dylan Hollingsworth, you know him?
Know the name.
Yeah. So he's shot for a lot of great publications, and he may still do this, but he started out shooting projects he wanted and then shopping them to people versus I've always had people come to me. So I'm putting together this sumo project, and I'm going to shop it around, maybe see if the Observer wants to run it, or I've got connections at the stuff like that. So that's what I'm doing now, is I'm going out and doing what I used to do pre-kids, and just shooting like hell. Wow.
Yeah. So basically, your bucket list is just to keep doing what you're doing in a way.
Yeah, because it's what I do. It's the same reason why I said I don't go to pay to see shows, because I'm not gonna give somebody 20 or whatever shows cost these days, and sit there and be the whole time, oh, I wish I could have shot that. Oh, I would have shot that. Oh,
Oh yeah, that's what I was going to ask you earlier. I forgot. Like, have you been to a show where you could just sit and enjoy it? Like,
not really. I will say this though. So, Tripping Daisy played Homegrown Fest. It was the first time that they played. Really since Wes died. So it was what, like 15 years or whatever. And so I shoot that, and because I'm so close to all the guys, and they were really kind of loose in the pit anyways. They let a lot of people in there past the first three. But so I'm shooting, and at some point I just kind of put my camera down, and I'm like, this might be the afterlife. I might have died, and just everything is electrically charging back into me as I go back into the ground. And so there's stuff that I'm able to set my camera down and just really, really appreciate. But usually if I'm somewhere without my camera, I can't do it.
Yeah.
I can't sit back at a show and do it. 'Cause Gavin, when he was at Bomb Factory, was really nice. He knew that I liked craft work, and I was like, oh, nobody set me up for the show. Morning News isn't covering it. And so he was like, well, if you and Coco want tickets, or you want to get in, I'll put you on the list. And I thanked him. I was like, man, you're awesome, special, but I'll pass. Because I knew I couldn't just go, as much as I love craft work, I couldn't just go there in the back and just sit. Yeah,
no, I'm the same way. Now that me and my girlfriend are together, and she likes to see shows, like we have gone to a few, and it's been tough for me sometimes. We did just go to Peter Gabriel, but I shot that, and then we bought tickets and watched, and that was one of the best shows that that's the first time I think I got a pass, and I was like, oh, I'm bummed I'm going to have to leave, and then we just bought tickets. But that's rare for me too. And then we didn't make it to the end. Well, we did, but we didn't make it to the last encore, because I can't deal with that. Well,
granted that too. You're at a point where it's like, do I want to fight the traffic getting home? So
exactly.
There's a reason people leave early.
Yeah. Yeah. And also, I had my bag checked in, and I'm always neurotic. Like, well, I need to get my bag tonight. Is it going to close? Like that stupid stuff. But hey, it was awesome. Why don't you? When does your show air on Deep Ellum Radio?
So right now we've got it scheduled for Tuesdays at 7. And Fridays at noon for the re-air.
Okay.
But it's the same thing, just me talking with friends. I know so many people that I can just sit down and we chat like this, and then I'll mix in a few songs related to what we're talking about. And it's fun for me. It's the same thing like I said with my photos, where I'm just going to do something that is inside me that I want to get out. And if people listen, they listen. If they don't, they don't. I've accomplished what I want to accomplish.
Cool. Jason, thanks again. We'll keep an ear out for your show, and obviously your photos are everywhere, so we'll be seeing them everywhere we go. So
sounds like fun.
All right, thanks. I'd really like to thank Jason Janik for being my guest. You can check out his podcast. You can check out his photos. His last name is spelled with a K, Janik, so That helps when you're looking for him. Theme song, Unstoppable by Salim Nourallah. Thank you for listening. Please like, subscribe, follow, all the good stuff, and share it with your friends. We'll see you next time.